everyone. My name is Luz Firpo, and I work for the YWCA Rhode Island Sarah Francis Grant Homestead Program in Central Falls.
And let's pick someone else to introduce themselves.
Oh, you mean me?
Yeah, you pick another name, yeah?
Oh, Diana Benderi. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing wrong your name, your last name.
Oh, you pronounced it right. Hi, everybody. I'm Diane Vendetti with Better Lives, Rhode Island.
All right, Diane, you want to pick whoever is next to introduce themselves? Oh, you're muted. How about Anna Maria?
Hi, so I'm Anna Maria Moore. I'm with the Providence Center, and I just recently took over like our housing department. So this is totally 100% new to me.
Well, welcome. All right, Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily. I'm the Compliance and Program Coordinator at Lucy's Hearth.
Welcome.
And I will pick Ken.
Ken's muted. Sometimes he has trouble with his mic.
Then I will move along to Ashley.
Hello, I'm Ashley Salemi. I am the operations manager at Lucy's Hearth. I'm the current HMIS agency administrator, but Emily is going to have that lovely task in the future. I would say Alyssa Allen.
Hi, everyone. Alyssa Allen. I am the contract manager for the Social Health Services Division at Community Care Alliance. And I will pick Christina.
Hi, I'm Christina. I'm part of the HMIS team at the Coalition.
All right. I think last but not least, Michelle.
Hi, my name is Michelle Ruiz. I'm the supportive housing case manager for child and family. Sorry that there's no camera. My computer doesn't have a camera.
No worries. Ken wrote in the chat. He's sorry the system has no mic. I'll introduce Ken. Ken Robinson is the shelter manager at McKinney Shelter in Newport. So we've got good Newport County representation today. Okay. Well, I'd like to, again, welcome you. This affinity group was really, designed to help newer system admins or sysadmins that we recognize you all have 100,000 other things to do. And this is just one little piece of the puzzle of what you have for your job roles. And it's really hard to gain all of the knowledge and skill you need to be an effective agency manager in HMIS while you're doing all of those other things. So we wanted to just have you set aside these 5 sessions so that we can really break it down into the basics and have a lot of time to stop and ask questions. So it's going to be really important. Ken, you can put your questions in the chat. Everyone else, you can too. You can also unmute. It's not formal. We're going to really just make sure that everyone leaves every session with their questions about the content we presented answered. All right, let's see. So the first question is, what is an affinity group? Really, it's just like it's a designated group of people who all share a similar, identity or similar goals. So in this case, we're designating it as a safe space. Well, there's 40 other there's 40 total agency managers in our agency manager meeting, and we recognize that some of them, that's their only job. because their agency is so large. And so, of course, they have superior knowledge of reports and superior knowledge of all the universal data elements and all the other HUD and HMIS speak. So we wanted to have a special place for you guys where, you know, there was a place for us to have this conversation. We will get to know each other a lot as the 5 weeks go on, but please, I want you to feel comfortable. We didn't talk much about our roles, but as the program manager, I lead the whole team, and I have lived experience of being an agency manager with 100,000 other things on my plate. And I work doing system admin and in the database, but I also work on other system-wide projects. And then Maria, she is the training and technical assistance specialist. So she helps onboard new agencies and train new users. And she also is the sort of lead on our help desk ticket. And then Tucker, he is our reporting and data analyst. So he is the person who helps produce reports, helps you troubleshoot reports, and he's also analyzing data. So he can pick up on trends when people are entering data incorrectly, or if there's an agency that's requiring a special report that isn't in existence, Tucker is the person to help. And then lastly, Christina, she recently joined our team, so she's been working as sort of a temp, and she's coming on board on a more permanent basis. She right now is helping us with all these hotels that we have hundreds and hundreds of people in hotels with a lot of data entry. So she's helping with that, and she's going to be staying on longer term to help with some of the new CES stuff. So we're really excited she's joining us. So you'll be seeing our 4 faces a lot. And let's see, I don't want to take up too much of our time, so let's keep going to the next step.
And I think you're on a cup. You're still stuck on the first slide. There you go. Yep.
All right. Here, really quick, are all of our sessions, and there's links here to all of the Zoom logins. And here's our agenda for today. We're going to talk about the agency manager role, security, privacy, funding sources, program components, CES, and inventories. Sorry, now Maria. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. And I apologize in advance. I have 3 kids running around, so they're okay if you hear a scream, they're fine. Okay, so basic agency manager responsibilities. So essentially the main role that you guys have is you are our main point of contact between our team and your agency. So what that means is when do we give you guys information? The way that we give you guys information is by attending that bi-weekly agency manager meeting. So we meet bi-weekly. They're on Tuesdays at 9:30. And if it does change, we do give you guys enough time with you know, that time change. I believe it's only ever been changed once. But it's usually at 9:30, and that's on Tuesdays. The attendance is tracked. So the attendance is actually, you know, it's a part of your agency funding COC score. So, you know, we do track those. They are mandatory for, if you are not able to attend, we do suggest you send someone in your place to attend. And again, we cover system updates, we cover trainings for agency managers specifically, and we also announce end user trainings during those meetings. We also go over like any questions that you guys may have. We take any considerations for you know, any things that you guys want to go over, we can definitely cover during those trainings, or hold specific trainings for your own agency or your own programs outside of this as well. So another basic responsibility that you guys have is that for your HMIS end users within your own agency, you guys are the first stop if they have questions. So if they have questions on how to edit their households, on clarity, they should be turning to you first, and you should be able to give that answer. Now, you know, if you guys need additional help, you guys can definitely reach out to us as well. But just keep in mind that you guys are the first stop for any HMIS questions within your agency end users. Now, another basic responsibility that you guys have is you have to update us when it comes to changes in within your agency. So what that means is if you guys receive new funding, if you guys have any bed and unit inventory changes, any new users or inactive users, any new programs, or if you guys are requiring any new licenses for HMIS. So all these little changes that you guys have, you know, again, anything to do with HMIS, we should be hearing it from you guys first. And it shouldn't be coming as a surprise to us, you know, in a meeting, if we're in a meeting with somebody else or your EDs, that information should be coming from you guys first, as soon as you guys receive that information. Does anyone have questions on that? I said basic a lot of times, and it's a lot of stuff, but that's like kind of the main focus of it. Okay, if we go to the next slide. So this covers, I linked the policies and procedures to this, and it's a lot, but so I won't go into detail. But the main thing is that you guys will be doing is, as an agency manager, is you're going to be monitoring your staff access and the use of HMIS. So basically, you're just going to be preventing staff misuse of the data. We'll go into it a little bit later, but you know, even if it's just emailing personal identifying information in emails, that's something that you guys have to be aware of, because that's a misuse of the data. You're also going to be restricting access to staff, restricting HMIS access to staff basically that only need it. So when you guys ask for an HMIS license or to have a new user trained, you know, you want to ask yourselves, does this person really actually need the access to HMIS? Because we are looking at thousands of records. You're also going to want to follow procedure changes. You know, any changes that come down from the HMIS steering committee or state or federal regulations. If there are any changes, you want to follow through with your agency in-house as well. Any implementing and maintaining data security policies and procedures. So again, all that's covered in the link, which these slides are going to go out, so you'll have access to these links as well. So if there's any need for recovery of data, you guys are also going to be, you know, the forefront of us reaching out and helping us recover that data, detecting and responding to violations of any federal HMIS or agency policies and procedures. So again, like I mentioned before, the PPI, if your end users send out unprotected client information in an email, you guys are going to be, you know, responsible to kind of follow up with us on, we do have a policy if that ever does happen. So it's like kind of a 3 strikes type thing, but you will be involved in that process as well. And you also have the responsibility of generating and reviewing data quality reports within the database, you know, to, like Jen had said, to address with Tucker, or he will see them and then we will reach out to you as to how we can identify those gaps and inconsistencies, either with whether if it's training or just something not going the way that it's supposed to be. So privacy and security, this is also covered in the link for the policies and procedures. But one of the things that you guys have to identify is a security officer. So this position is someone within your agency. They are responsible for completing the HMIS privacy, the annual compliance certification checklist. So this is basically someone who conducts this security audit for any workstations that access HMIS. So there's a lot of, that checklist basically covers what every workstation needs to have, or, you know, we're talking about a malware, virus scans, all this, even like technical safeguards for the actual workstation. So one of the things that was confusing, and we're kind of trying to iron that out, is this position can be fulfilled by the agency manager, but it does not have to be the same person. So you can choose someone else to have this role, if you need to. And if it's just easier for you to also be the security officer, that's also okay. Yes, they were being combined, but we have not actually outlined that in our policies and procedures. But essentially, we are moving towards the security officer and agency admin roles to be combined. Thank you for paying attention, Ashley. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay. And I believe this next one is, yes.
Okay, so HMIS, the database actually is a required element for a number of funding sources. There's not going to be a quiz. You don't have to know all of these at the end, but some of these may be familiar to you because your agency is funded under some of them. So the main two that most folks in the state are funded under are Consolidated Homeless Fund, CHF, which a lot of us are scrambling to get our grant proposals ready for April 30th. That is the Consolidated Homeless Fund proposal. That includes just regular ESG funds. It includes the newest COVID-related ESG-CV funds. It also includes HRC, which is a state-generated fund. And then lastly, Title 20, which is a fancy name for some funding that comes out of the Social Service Block Grant. Not fancy names, but we just call it Title 20. It's SSBG on your reporting. The second major source of funding for homeless services and housing services in Rhode Island is the Continuum of Care, and they fund permanent supportive and rapid rehousing. It also includes the formerly known as Shelter Plus Care Fund. So some of your orgs still have grants or programs that you're calling Shelter Plus Care, but the two main types of programs are permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing and rental assistance. HUD does require that some of the Veterans Office of Veterans Affairs, VA, housing, and services, so VASH and SSVF, are also entering data into our database. We're so excited. We have two RIHMIS programs, Runaway and Homeless Youth. So our two providers right now are Family Service of Rhode Island and House of Hope. There is also, so these are federal funding partners here. So the VA, RIHMIS, and PASS, these are all federal funding partners. So they're not HUD, but they're other departments that are partners. So PASS stands for Projects for Assistance in Transition from Homelessness. House of Hope is the major PASS provider. We also have been applying for and are hoping to obtain a YHDP or Youth Demonstration Project funding. And then here are some other mainstream funding sources that are familiar. HCVP or Housing Choice Vouchers, Project-Based Section 8 vouchers. There's some Section 8 mod rehab, public housing. So public housing does not enter data into HMIS, but sometimes you have people who move up or move out of your HUD or HMIS projects into public housing. Home, which is a federal pass-through to create, build, create, and sustain some affordable units. And then VOCA, which stands for Victims of Crime Act. So VOCA is mainstream funding, but to be clear, people who are funded as a victim service provider are prohibited by law from entering into our system. So there are some agencies that are specifically victim service agencies, for example, Sojourner House or Elizabeth Buffum Chase House. Those are organizations that do not enter into our HMIS, but they each have what we call a comparable database. And they're entering all the same things you are, but just not connected to the internet for security. And then there's this lovely other local fund that Rhode Island Housing actually created from their mortgage program income called Road Home. That program is coming to a close, but some folks are still funded under some Road Home here and there. So we added it to this list. All right. So again, there's no quiz, but this is, it's quite a bunch of programs. So just to give you an idea of what's in our database. Next up is program components. Tucker's going to talk about the different program components.
Yep. So basically everything that is entered into HMIS is in a program, and it's in a particular type of program. And you as the agency manager, you just need to know what kinds of programs you have at your agency. So most of you don't have all of these types of programs. I think Alyssa probably has the most different type of programs, but many of you only have one or two. And so that's kind of all you need to keep track of are the requirements for the types of programs that you particularly have. And the key part is that every time there's if you're starting a new program or if there's something going on, everything is just in one, you can't have a program that does more than one of these different types of things. So everything has to be kind of contained within these programs. So there are emergency shelters. Many of you have emergency shelters, and those are short-term beds. I think we all have an idea of what our emergency shelters are doing, and they can either be tracked by entry-exit. So in those cases, you're counting the client as being there every night from when they enter to when they leave. Or there are night-by-night tracking where there is a bed list that every night is updated and everybody who's in bed that night is checked into the bed list. There's transitional housing, which is generally time limited and has a longer length of stay, but is still usually time limited to under 2 years for how long folks can stay. And once clients move into transitional housing, they're no longer considered street or shelter homeless in terms of their eligibility for housing. And then a day shelter is a site where there are facilities and services provided to homeless folks, but without having overnight beds, basically. Street outreach is for providing services to unsheltered homeless. Homeless prevention is to prevent somebody from becoming street or shelter homeless. And then rapid rehousing is providing similar services, but for somebody who's currently homeless to end their homelessness. And the key part there is that if somebody is already homeless, they have to go into a rapid rehousing project. But if they're not homeless yet, then they have to go into a homeless prevention project. And there can also be service-only projects, and those would be to provide kind of standalone supportive services. It could be the case that they're associated with some housing, or they can be kind of on their own providing some service. And then there are permanent supportive housing, which is generally the COC grant, and those are that's housing that includes services for people who have a disability, and usually are reserved for people who have been chronically homeless. And then there's PH housing with services, which is usually not COC funded, but is available to formerly homeless people, but isn't limited in the same way. And then PH housing only is housing that we have in our system, but doesn't include any services. And then other and safe haven, those two you won't really have to worry about because you won't really be using them. Safe havens are low barrier situations that there aren't any of those in Rhode Island. So if it changes, we'll find out about that. And then other is for projects that aren't really tracking other things in HMIS. They're kind of set up to do some specific purpose, but not be a part of the overall system. Anybody have any questions? Does everybody kind of know what the projects that are at their agency are, what project types those are? Because that's really the key point. If anybody has any questions about what kind of project their own projects are.
I think another thing when you're working at your agencies is sometimes project names may lead you to think that you have a different kind of project. So when we talk about these program components that are project types that Tucker just told you about, these are the types that you're funded for. So in your funding application from CHF or COC or whatever your entity is funding you, it will indicate what project type or program component you're funded for. Component, I should say. Please feel free to unmute if you have questions. Everyone's very quiet today. Okay, next up, Maria's going to talk about CES.
Coordinated entry, everyone's favorite program. Okay, so under the HERF Act, we are actually required to have a coordinated entry. And the reason for this is because within coordinated entry, staff completes an assessment. The assessment then identifies who is the most vulnerable within the community that we're serving. And then that's how coordinated entry prioritizes our clients into shelter or housing. So if your program is funded by these three, we're talking about the COC, CHF, and DSG, then you are required, and actually your contract, it'll say it in your contract, that you are to report and fill all of your vacancies through coordinated entry. So essentially what this means for your agency is that there should be at least one end user, one HMIS user that needs to have completed the CES training and have access on HMIS to enroll their clients into coordinated entry to complete those assessments. That's then going to give them the vulnerability score after they complete the assessment, and also provide any updates within the client profile. So one of the things to remember about coordinated entry is that there's very limited resources in coordinated entry. So not everyone is going to be housed through coordinated entry, but the shelter referrals will happen through this. Does anyone have any questions on that? No? So I guess the big takeaway of this is someone in your agency needs to have access to coordinated entry, because your agency should also be entering people into CES, not just the hotline.
I think another takeaway also is you all have had the good fortune to come into your roles during a time of transition. So coordinated entry has been, it's been around, but we had a coordinated entry evaluation that we received the results of about a year ago, and as a system, so not HMIS, but like the group of people who are part of COC and subcommittees, those groups of people, the system, I guess, collaborators, I don't know what you would call them, but they've been looking at the evaluation and making changes. So CES has been changing. The provider for CES recently changed in December for the shelter referrals from Crossroads to the coalition agency. So there's been a lot of changes, and there's still more changes to come because of our database changing. So the way referrals happen are going to start flowing more and more through Clarity. So if you feel like, oh my goodness, every time I master something, it changes, that's been happening for the last few months. So bear with us. Once we finish all of these changes, we'll be in a place where things are just much easier and much more transparent. Does anyone have CES questions?
I just have a question. So how do you get the CES access?
That's a good question. So every HMIS user has access to the learning management system. So that's the LMS. So when you first trained to be live into Clarity, you were given the site, the link to the site, and your password and your username. So within that LMS, anyone who is currently either active or training for HMIS still has access to that. Any trainings that we have are uploaded to those recordings, and those quizzes are uploaded, to that LMS. But give me 1 minute, please. So that access is through the LMS. After they take that quiz, they'll be able to receive that access. So I think it's every Tuesday and Thursday that I pull those reports. So if you take it on Monday, I won't be able to pull that report until Tuesday, but Tuesday you would have access to coordinated entry.
And then, thanks, Maria. And then to answer Ashley's question in the chat, she says, we continue to refer clients to CES, but maybe we should be entering them into HMIS ourselves. The answer to that is, if you're able to, yes. So if you have, most of your clients at shelter will already have gone through CES to be referred, but if you have people that come to your shelter or call and you're able to, you certainly can enter them into CES, enroll them, I should say, into coordinated entry project yourself. Then you ask, will there be diversion trainings to help staff that are direct clients seeking shelter? The answer to that is, I think so. So when the transition happened between Crossroads, Rhode Island, and the coalition taking over the call center, and it was diversion and triage. So the triage piece came to the coalition, but the diversion piece still sits with Crossroads. So Crossroads is working on training shelters. Ben Haney, who most of us have come in contact with through one way or another, recently became the manager for the diversion department. So Ashley, if he's not come out to your shelter or they've not come out to do some trainings, definitely reach out, because I think that that's their goal, is to be doing those trainings. And then, will the assessments be available in our home programs or always in CES? They will only be available in your CES project, because it is an assessment for people who are enrolled in coordinated entry, and the assessment is designed to measure people's acuity, so that when they get placed on the queue, people who are the highest acute are sort of prioritized into shelter or housing. So it will only live there. Yeah. Yes, and I did say there are more changes to come. The next phase for CES is when we finish. Shelter referrals will be going through the through HMIS. So the folks working for CES will be able to use HMIS data to actually make referrals into your program. And then you programs will be able to snag referrals out of Clarity. And so we'll cut down on all those other superfluous emails it'll just go straight through Clarity. I'm sure this will be emails, but not quite as much. Yeah. All right. And then lastly, inventories. Tucker, I think, are you talking inventories? You are.
Yep. So inventories are a key part of any program that provides any type of overnight lodging. So any emergency shelter, transitional program, or any kind of housing program has inventories associated with it. Basically, each inventory has a start and an end date for the time period that configuration of the program was available. So if you have a building and you have a fire and you lose a couple of the units, you would need to let us know that those units are no longer available because of the fire until for an extended period of time. Similar things like that. Or if you get additional funding for a project and are able to expand, then you would let us know that you have a new configuration with more units, beds and units. So the inventory has a number of beds, and that will be for any homeless persons, for youth, for veterans, or for youth veterans. So you can have a veteran set aside or a youth set aside in the number of beds. And then it will also have a number of units. And generally the number of units is the same as the number of households served. So if you have a shelter with a room with 4 beds in it, if that's a family shelter, that is probably 1 unit that can serve a family of 4, but if you have an individual shelter, it could be 4 units serving 4 individual women who can stay there in those beds. And finally, there has to be an inventory for households, whether it's families with children or if it's only for households without children, primarily single adults. And then in an emergency shelter, we have to know if those beds are available year round, if they're only available seasonally, or if they are overflow. And overflow would be beds that are not available every night. They're only available if under circumstances where you really need them. And then lastly, emergency shelter can also be either a facility or hotel vouchers. So we have the hotel voucher projects coming on due to the ESG-CV funding, and those just have a different type of inventory than the facility-based shelters in the state. And it could be facility-based even if you have even if it's a shelter that is a couple of multifamily buildings, that's still a facility-based shelter because you have those buildings that are where the shelter is. And anytime there's a significant change to the inventory, we just want you guys to let us know about it. And we run reports that are based on the utilization of beds system-wide very regularly. So we really just want to make sure that all of the programs, we have their accurate information in the system, so we know what the overall system utilization looks like, how full are all of the projects in the state. And we're doing this right now, especially because we have a HUD report that we have to finish by the end of April. So that's why we're covering this early on, because we have a deadline with HUD. Anybody have any questions about inventories?
Everyone's very quiet. remember, there are no questions that are silly questions because we know this is a lot of new information. We know we speak a different language here, this HUD and the HMIS language. So please unmute and ask away. All right. Well, how about this? Why don't we try, sure, so I'm going to ask you all, you could either unmute and, I guess we would all talk at once. If you could, if you're able to put in the chat, what is your sort of most daunting task of being an HMIS manager right now, or the thing that is like the scariest thing for you? So when I became an agency manager, data entry was fine, but it was running the reports that was really challenging, and I had to work to, you know, to learn to run the reports, the right reports. And then once you got the report, what to do with it was also another question mark for me. So if you could, just go ahead and put in the chat, what is the one thing as an agency manager that you sort of, I don't know, procrastinate doing or dislike doing or wish you didn't have to do? Any of the above. Yeah, Emily says reports, not necessarily running them, but interpreting the data correctly. Yeah, that's actually great. That's pretty common. Reports, lose, absolutely. Alyssa, absolutely keeping track of the different programs. And like Tucker said, Alyssa, you have the range. Did that make you feel better that you have more of a range of reports to run?
I actually didn't know that. That's surprising to me. So.
Yeah. Ashley, yeah, monitoring the many different elements. It's true. So what Ashley's referring to is COC. They weigh different elements differently than CHF does. And then if you happen to have a rapid rehousing project, there's different things they look at for continued funding or additional funding. So what Ashley's saying is just keeping track of who tracks what. Michelle, this might be a funny question. How do I stop receiving notifications for past referrals? That is not a funny question. That's a good question. Yeah. How to stop receiving notifications for past referrals. So especially now the shelter referral, if you refer someone to the shelter queue, or the housing, well, not the housing queue, but the shelter queue, they expire after 30 days. And if you have a referral that has expired, you will receive a notice. I don't know that you continue to receive the same notice over and over. Michelle, do you have a, let's see. I'm trying to see if I can.
I get like emails almost every single day, and it'll tell me like what client I referred, and it'll say the referral date that I did it in, and then days pending, and I have someone here that says 95 days, 47 days.
Okay.
But she's no longer a client, so I still get those emails and notifications.
Okay. So I'm looking in one of my referral notifications right now. Okay, so when you receive your referral, I want to make sure there's no like names. There are. So when you click on the referral notice, so when you're in Clarity, at the top right-hand side of your screen, that little envelope. If you click there, that's where you will be able to click the little envelope, and then that's your inbox. So you will have any referral notices in there. And Tucker and Maria, correct me if I'm wrong, because we don't make a lot of referrals as system admins. I've made a few helping some of the street outreach team for a minute. They were having an issue. So once you click on the message, the actual referral comes up with the person's name and the date you made the referral. And in this case, I'm looking at a referral that was denied due to inactivity. But if you have one that's still active, you scroll down to the bottom and you can reassign. There's an option to, I'm gonna see if I can. Okay, I'm gonna show you, we're all HMIS users, so if you see any client names, you've already signed your end user agreement. Let me see if I can show you here. Oh, the reason we have an account past due notice is because we're withholding payment because they've not migrated our files over. So we are not paying until they finish their job. Okay, so I clicked on my little envelope here. I had an inbox message, which I clicked on. Here's my message. So this is an active referral and it's just simply been updated. So when I scroll down here, you can click this link to go to the referral. Sorry about the name. And down here, you can reassign to another program. So Alyssa, I happen to be in CCA, sorry, from our last meeting this morning. But you can go into, it should be you should be in coordinated entry, and you should be able to, I guess you wouldn't reassign it to coordinated entry. I guess you would, if they're no longer active in coordinated entry, I guess you would remove them if they're no longer with you. So if you're no longer working with that client and they're working with another agency, you wouldn't want to remove them. You would want to, like, for example,
and I think we need to check the settings on this more carefully.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think we should tell folks to start reassigning their referrals that they make.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but there is a way to make them stop if they're no longer your clients. We'll get it to you guys at the agency manager meeting. I'm going to put it in my notes now so we can make sure to talk about it. All right. Any other questions?
Knowing what report to use for different situations and what the best report is for data. Yes, that is definitely something we will cover when we talk about reports.
So we're gonna, I don't think it's in here. We're gonna talk about reports. One of these weeks is gonna be all reports. So by the end of that Affinity group, you will have good report knowledge, and hopefully you'll have a list of reports that you could run for your projects and how often to run them. That would be a great takeaway from that. Any other questions? Go ahead and you can unmute or put it in the chat. All right. Well, we will go ahead and wrap up. I'm just going to take a look here. The next Affinity group is in 2 weeks. So next week on Tuesday morning will be the biweekly agency manager meeting, which most of you will be attending. So that will be the regularly scheduled day and time. It's Tuesday the 27th at 9:30 for an hour. And then the following Tuesday is when we'll meet again, and that will be on May 4th, and that time will be at 11. In the meantime, oops, go ahead, Maria.
Sorry, if you go down to the last slide, I also put the links for the help desk hours.
That's so funny. That's what I was just going to say. In the meantime, if you need help. So here is an end user session. So yourself or any of your end users who are needing some assistance can go to the 9 o'clock on every Friday office hour for end users. And all of you agency managers, and for larger agencies, sometimes there's the second person there, can attend the agency manager office hour, which is every Friday from 12:30 to 1:30. And just to give you an idea of how office hours work, the point of the office hour is that the people who are hosting the office hour are available for the whole hour. So if you have something that runs late and you're not available precisely at 12:30, but maybe 12:45 or 1, you can still go to the office hour. So you don't need to be there right on time. You can just pop in. Sometimes there's other people there and you might have to wait your turn to get your question addressed. But we're hoping that it's a more flexible way for you to get some help each week. So you know that there's someone who can help you answer your questions weekly in addition to the help desk. All right, last chance. Any questions, comments?